Good morning, members, and welcome to the Planning Applications Committee meeting of Wednesday, 29th of October 2025. This meeting has been live streamed and will be made available on the Council website for public viewing. Remote participants, please follow the good practice guidance, which includes muting microphones and switching off your video when you're not addressing the meeting, writing speak in the Teams chat function when you want to contribute. If you're in the hall, you can do this on your iPhone or iPad. Please do not repeat contributions already made by other members. No material should be posted in the chat function if it is intended as part of the discussion. Usual standing orders apply, including that any votes will be undertaken by roll call. If any member has to leave the meeting, please either leave the Teams meeting for that period of time or write leave in the Teams chat function and then join when you rejoin the meeting so we can keep track of whether the meeting is quorate. All members should speak clearly and directly into the microphone when making contributions. And when referring to reports, please provide reference to the relevant page and paragraph to allow everyone to follow. Please focus contributions on areas where clarification is required or to propose an alternative to a recommendation. Similar to the process now followed at full council, when considering motions and amendments which are substantive in nature, I will call a recess where necessary so that I may seek governance advice on competency. This is good practice governance terms and will also provide for governance to be able to collate and circulate the terms of said motion or amendment to members in order that they have the opportunity to properly review it. I hope this process makes matters more effective and I seek members' support in implementing this. I should also say at this stage, members, that there will be a change after this meeting. This will be the last meeting where our clerk is required to read out submissions, written submissions. They will now either be placed on the council website or a substitute person, an individual in person, will make that representation for them. The usual standing orders apply, including that any votes will be undertaken by roll call. Tracy, can you confirm the said and apologies, please? And I do approve members' remote participation. And at this juncture, I will ask everyone to make sure their mobile phones are either on silent or switched off. Tracy, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. We've got 14 members present in total, 6 members present in person here at Council HQ, being the Chair, the Vice Chair, Councillor John Campbell, Councillor Drysdale, Councillor Hislop and Councillor Slater. We've got 8 members present on Microsoft Teams, being Councillor Blake, Councillor Giusti, Councillor Jordan, Councillor Lowe, Councillor McFarlane, Councillor Marshall, Councillor Thompson, Councillor Walters. I've got 2 apologies, one from Councillor Hill and one from Councillor Maureen Johnston, and not present at the start of the meeting is Councillor Dryborough. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Tracy. Are there any declarations of interest, members? I see Councillor Marshall and Councillor Jordan looking to speak. So Councillor Marshall first, please.
I think it'll be on the same point. Councillor Dryborough can't make the beginning of the meeting, but he's hoping to join at some stage.
Thanks very much, Councillor Marshall. Councillor Jordan, I see you're acknowledging it was the same point, so thanks very much for that. Vice Chair, Councillor Barretti, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's a statement to connection to item 6, with this being an application. It's in where I live, and I've had discussions with people, or people have come to discuss this with me, but And given through the letterbox from both sides, I've never made any comments about it and feel that I can stay in the meeting.
Thanks very much, Councillor Moretti. I don't see any other declarations of interest. So I will move to the minute of the previous meeting, 25th September 2025. If this is a true record, please, members, would you indicate that? And if not, I have acknowledgement from the floor that it's a true record. I don't see any other indication or negative indication. So we'll take it that this is a true record of the meeting, members. Thank you very much. And I will now ask our clerk to outline the procedure to be followed at the meeting today. And I can see Councillor Giusti saying that he'll be on until 12, then he has an appointment afterwards. So we acknowledge that as well. Tracy, can you go through the process for today, please? Thank
you, Chair. The Planning Applications Committee will consider each application in turn as detailed on the agenda. The case officer or their appointed officer will make a short presentation addressing the determining issues accompanied by digital images. Any late information, amendments or corrections will be reported at this time. Members may ask questions of officers following the presentation on points of clarification. The Chair has been provided with a list of eligible representatives who have registered to speak at this meeting within the period specified in Council policy. No other persons will be allowed to speak. The Chair will individually invite those who have registered in advance to speak to make their presentation, after which they may be questioned by committee members. No questions may be asked of members. The order of eligible parties being heard will be as follows: third parties objecting to an application, third parties supporting an application, statutory consultees objecting to an application, elected members of Dumfries and Galloway Council who are not members of the Planning Applications Committee, and such members should withdraw from the meeting after making their presentation, and then applicants or their agents. Representatives were offered the option of attending today's meeting in person, joining remotely via Microsoft Teams, or to provide a written statement to be read out on their behalf. Presentations will be strictly limited to 3 minutes per person, except for national and major developments, which by their very nature are more complex, where the time limit will be 5 minutes. The Chair of the committee will ask you to come to a conclusion if you take too long. Representatives are encouraged to use the time allotted to clarify any points they consider material and address the determining issues. Certain matters are not normally material planning considerations and will not be taken into account by the Council when deciding on a planning application. Representatives should not raise any new matters without explaining why they were not raised earlier with the case officer. Please do not repeat what is in the report, as members will have already read the report. After all the representations have been heard, the meeting is then in formal session and no members of the public may address the committee from the public gallery. The Planning Applications Committee will then proceed to determine the application. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much, Tracy. We move on, members, to agenda item number 4. An application for ground reprofiling and placement of rock armour embankment reinforcement, installation of draw-off kiosk and ventilation column, formation of service lay-by and associated works at land south of the Boathouse Restaurant, Quayside, Glencaple, Dumfries. This is a full application, reference number 24/0783/full. The recommendation is to approve this application, and the case officer's first time with the committee is David Harton. So welcome, David. If you want to take us through your presentation, please.
Thank you, Chair. So the site of the proposed development is land to the south of the Boathouse Restaurant at Glencaple. You can see from this location plan here, just to give you some context of the application site, the boathouse is immediately to the north of the application site. You have Shore Road to the east, and you've got the River Nith to the west and some shoreline to the south. Now, the application site itself is comprised of low-lying grassland, which slopes from north and east towards the River Nith to the west. The site is wholly within the Nith Estuary National Scenic Area. It's partially within the Solway Coast Regional Scenic Area, and it adjoins the Upper Solway Flats and Marshes, Ramsar and Triple SI sites. It is also adjoining the Solway Firth Special Area of Conservation and the Special Protection Area, and the site also adjoins an area of archaeological interest. Finally, the site is known to be at high risk from coastal flooding as set out on SEPA flood risk maps. This slide shows the block plan. It's to show the proposals as they would appear on the ground. So what you can see from this plan is the location of the embankment and the rock armour that is to be placed on the site. You can also see the location of the septic tanks, which do not form part of this application as they are permitted development under Class 43A of the General Permitted Development Order. To the east of the site, adjoining the road, you can see the provision of the service lay-by. Between the service lay-by and the public footpath is the location of the draw-off kiosk, and the ventilation column is in close proximity to the septic tanks, which you can see centrally within the site. The ground levels are to be raised to cover the septic tanks, so you will not see these when the development is completed, if approved. This is a section through the site, so you can see from the right-hand side, which is the Shore Road, you can see where the draw-off kiosk is going to be positioned. Then it's the lay-by. You've got the raised ground level, which will cover the underground septic tanks. Centrally to that, you can see the 4-metre high ventilation column, and then the land slopes away in the form of the embankment towards the River Nith. This is the service lay-by, which is proposed to accommodate the tanker when the septic tanks are to be emptied. It's anticipated that this will be twice a year, according to the applicant, and these will be monitored by the applicant. The service lay-by itself is to be formed in grasscrete rather than hard standing, so that should allow for some softening of the visual impact of the lay-by as opposed to a fully hard surface solution. Here we have elevations of the draw-off kiosk and ventilation column. The kiosk is relatively small scale in nature, measuring 1.25 metres in height and will be clad in timber, whereas the ventilation column, which requires to be located close to the septic tanks, is 4 metres in height. Moving on to the photographs of the site. So this first photograph was taken from the south towards the site. You can see the Boathouse restaurant beyond, and you can also see the properties that line Shore Road to the east. What you can also see from this photograph is the low-lying nature of the site. Given the sort of topography of the site, you can see that the site presently sits lower than the road and slopes down towards the River Nith. This is just a close-up view of that site from the south. Again, just to sort of emphasise the low-lying nature of the site as it presently exists. Again, another close-up view, this time taken from slightly further round, so taken from the southwest, to give an idea of exactly where the septic tanks are going to be located and where the rock armour is proposed. And then we have a view of the site from the northwest back towards the site. Again, you can see Shore Road there, which is to the east of the application site. Standing here, the Boathouse restaurant is to my left. The key issues in this application is that it is accepted that the works are required to increase capacity and ensure there is sufficient infrastructure for potential new developments in the locale. They have proposed granite rock armour, and that is not the ideal visual solution, whereas sandstone would be. However, the use of sandstone is likely to have far greater implications and impact on ecology due to construction requirements. It would be a much more complex construction approach that would need to be taken, and potentially more intrusive on site. The visual impact of aspects of this development can be partially mitigated by way of conditions, and these conditions are set out in the report of handling, and there are no objections from consultees. So the recommendation is to approve the application subject to conditions. That concludes my presentation, and if members have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thanks very much, David. Members, any questions for our case officer, Councillor Hislop, followed by Councillor Slater, please?
Chair, it's with regard to the actual uplifting of the land. What impact will that have on the flooding of that area? Because I can think of, was it housing proposed for Carn Salach, whereby there was to be uplifting of land taken, and that had an impact on the actual flood scheme, and the flood officers weren't keen on it. We had the house down at Carsthorne, the other side of the road, which was going to have an impact on flooding as well. Was there any consideration as to where that water would be displaced to?
David?
Thank you, Councillor. SEPA were consulted on this application, given that it is in a high-risk area of coastal flooding, and in their response they were satisfied that the proposals were acceptable. Indeed, the displacement of water, I appreciate the point you're making. There is sufficient land to the east, sorry, not to the east, to the west of the River Nith, within which this water can be accommodated in the event of a flooding event.
Thanks, Councillor Hislop. Councillor Slater, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Questions I have, David, is they're talking about outflow into the River Nith. Now, what treatment does that have? And also the other thing is about the 4 metre high ventilation pipe, you call it. What's the situation with any aromas of it that may come off that pipe at that site? And one last point is there's a tremendous problem with wet wipes. People flush down toilets, and there's in places where they have like a machine that actually collects them and they can empty them away. What happens with the tank? They just go into the tank and fill the tank. But the outflow is the main thing for me. How is the water? Is it treated in any way? Is it filtered in any way? Or is it just because many times I've seen sewage coming from the outgoing tide from the sewage works. I've seen that many times in water. So I'm just wondering how this will operate here. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Slater. David, please.
Thank you, Councillor. It's my understanding that SEPA not only have not objected to this application, but have granted a licence to Scottish Water in respect of this facility. So, while I cannot sit here and categorically tell you there is treatment, I can't imagine that there won't be treatment, given that you're right, it is going to have outfall into the River Nith. However, the applicant would perhaps be best placed to answer that particular point, and I'm aware that they may be here to speak with the committee. In terms of the ventilation column, the requirement for that to be located where it is shown on the submitted plans is purely to do with the function of the septic tanks and indeed the facility itself, and to relocate that somewhere affects the efficiency of that and could ultimately cause the likes of odour issues. However, if odour issues were to arise, this would be best addressed under environmental health legislation in any event. But provided that the system operates as designed, there should not be odour issues. Could you clarify what your last point was, please, Councillor?
Wet wipes, which are flushed down toilets in great quantities nowadays, and they don't biodegrade, and there's machines that they have now to pick it up. It's like, you could say, a combine harvester. It's like a circular device. It picks them out of the water. That's not going to be there, that tank. I assume will just fill up
David,
with
I
those.
don't think that's a planning consideration, but
Okay.
what you can do is you can put that question
that's-
to the applicant,
that's
because I've
okay.
already noted
Thank
that you'd
you.
want to ask them about the first
Okay,
point
thank
as
you
well.
very much. Thank you.
So we'll leave that, and you can ask the applicant, although bear in mind it's not a planning matter. Councillor Campbell, followed by Councillor Drysdale, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for your presentation, David. I was looking on page 25, and you actually mentioned it verbally earlier, where it says it's understood from the applicant that the use of sandstone would have resulted in substantially more intrusive and complex approach on the site in terms of construction requirements. Could you kind of elaborate what the difference is of putting a block of sandstone or a block of granite in the same sort of place? I'm not quite sure how I fully understand that.
David.
Thank you, Councillor. What is meant by that is that further intrusive works would need to be carried out in order to achieve, I suppose, the same solution to protect the septic tanks and associated infrastructure. That could involve formation of further retaining walls to support the structure and to protect the structure from potential flooding in the event that that occurs. Beyond that, I would advise again that if the applicant is here, that they would perhaps be better placed to answer that particular question. Thank you.
Thanks. I'll ask the applicant, Chair.
Thanks very much, Councillor Campbell. I've already got you noted doing councillors later, and then you for speaking to the applicant once they've completed the presentation. Councillor Drysdale, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good morning, members. Thank you, David, for the report. Just a quick question with regards to the actual plan itself. Now, when people are using the boathouse, it does bring a lot of tourists into the area. I know that's a separate property and a separate business, but there's a path, and the question I have for you is that a core path that leads from the boathouse? Because when visitors and locals are visiting the boathouse, they can park and walk dogs, and it looks to me on this plan that we're going to lose that accessibility for that walking sector. So we can ask, I know I am aware that I can ask the applicant as to whether or not that's going to be reinstated or rebuilt, but if you could just give us some background, A, is it a core path, and B, will the applicant be able to incorporate a path? Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Drysdale. David.
Thank you, Councillor. I can confirm it's not a core path. It's not formalised in any way. Whether or not the applicant would be willing to provide some sort of rerouted path through the site would be certainly a question for the applicant. I can't imagine that we would have any objections to that, should that be the case. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Drysdale. I've got you noted as well for speaking to the applicant. Are there any other questions for our case officer? In that case, thanks for your presentation, David. We move on to registered speakers. We have 4 objections to be, or statements read out by our clerk. Usual rules apply, 3 minutes per application or statement. In the event that it goes beyond 3 minutes, we'll just ask the clerk to conclude her reading of the statement at a 3-minute window. So there are 4, just whenever, there are 5 in fact, whenever you're ready, Tracy, please.
Thank you, Chair. The first statement is from Keith Brown, objector. Unfortunately, I am unable to attend the meeting, but would be grateful if members can consider the following before making a decision on this application. 1. Apply a condition that the use of granite rock armour should be omitted and replaced with a sandstone to suit. This may be in the form of retaining wall to suit the existing Grade C listed quay. 2. Further consideration should be given to the water quality. It makes sense to increase capacity, but in this day and age, an improvement on what is being discharged to the river should be a top priority. Please note I am not against this application, but I feel these two important points need to be addressed and included within any approval. Thank you. The second statement is Tom Brown, objector. I am a lifelong resident of Glencapel and Calaverick. I remember the current system being installed light years ago and the ongoing issues Scottish Water have had with the system. Inlet blockages and regular tanker withdrawals. Scottish Water have held meetings and public consultations to get local views on the proposals. None of the suggested proposals benefit the overall finished job have been taken up. The proposal was first mooted. Why bother consulting? Steamrolled in purely on cost. No one has objected to the upgrade. The objections are all on the finished job. This is right in the centre of the village and will be viewed for generations. Let's make it pretty and acceptable. Planning officers have failed to grasp this totally sited granite rock armour is acceptable. Maybe in Rockcliffe, but not here surely. Local village plans is a reference. Our quay is a listed structure, maybe not grade 1, but unique. Let's at least have a sandstone edge around the southwest perimeter of all said development, replicating our quay. The vent pipe we asked to be designed to look like a ship's mast, as is on side of the old shipyard. Scottish Water said it could not be guaranteed by the supplier. Design it so it is guaranteed, for goodness sake, and make some effort, please. Regards direct discharge into the Nith. A single dwelling is required to put in soakaways, etc. from a septic tank, not discharging into a watercourse. Glencapel will discharge over 150 dwellings straight into the Nith and an SSSI. Hopefully the points I've raised may actually fall on some ears listening today and will action some relatively inexpensive amendments to this project. Thank you. So the next statement is from Calaverick Community Association. Please treat this letter as representations on the above planning application made on behalf of the objector, the Association, for the purposes of the meeting. The Association does not object to the project as a whole, merely to its design and effect on the village of Glencapel for this and future generations. The scheme is welcomed given that the current sewage system is outdated and has insufficient capacity for current or future needs. The Association accepts that the below ground works do not require consent, but we are dismayed that the applicant is adopting a solution which is not required in the extreme and would not be allowed in the case of any other private or commercial development. The fact that it then compounds the issue with poorly designed and inappropriate above-ground works adds to the Association's dissatisfaction with this application. I have read the report of the case officer and respond and refer to it where necessary as follows. Paragraph 1.2. This sets out the ecological and scenic importance of the site and why its treatment needs to be protected and enhanced. Paragraph 1.3. This sets out the material works that will impact this sensitive and historic site. Particularly one of the main points of contention, I quote, the proposed rock armour is to be formed in granite. Paragraph 4.1. Reference to S25 is noted. I would emphasise that this includes the provision, unless material considerations indicate otherwise. I ask that you commit this point in mind in determining this application. In its supporting letter, the applicant seeks to justify its design largely on the grounds that it complies with planning policies. The simple fact is that the design breaches many policies in a number of significant respects set out in our original objection, but particularly in relation to the use of rock armour. Paragraph 4.3, this references a number of key criteria of which I emphasise siting, design, landscaping and visual impacts. Paragraph 4.7 admits that sandstone would have been more sympathetic to the visual amenity of the locale. Paragraph 4.15, it is accepted that the use of granite would be out of character with the development within Glencapel, including the historic listed quay. CCE representations. 1. Rock armour. The use of rock armour as a means of protecting this installation is predicted on cost alone as opposed to the more sensitive use of design mirroring the listed quay. If rock armour is to be used, then the applicant has not explained why the design cannot be retained and the rock type substituted sandstone for granite. Planting will not hide the exposed faces of the armour and is insufficient mitigation. Attempting to reduce the impact is not an acceptable solution when in all other respects new development would require sandstone for this very reason. This community would have to live with this product for the development for 2 or more generations, and attention to the design at this stage is a priority. That's 3 minutes, Chair.
Thank you.
The next statement is from Fiona Hinchcliffe, objector. I am disappointed and quite shocked that more is not being done to adapt the proposal to meet our concerns, all of which have been seemingly swept aside. 1, as concerns the rock armour, in its proposed form, it will definitely detract from the scenic values and the historic key area and adjacent salt marsh. There are likely to be many options for defending the new installation in a way that can blend in more appropriately, and we would like to have a say in designing them. For example, it's not clear why, if granite can be used as rock armour, red sandstone could not be used as rock armour instead. Also, the suggestion of planting or seeding the rock armour would need to be carefully planned if it is to succeed and be appropriate. The choice of species used should be made in consultation with experts from either Nature Scot or the South West Scotland Environmental Information Centre. Repeated attempts may be needed to get these species to take, and there will also likely need to be regular weeding and maintenance required, which should not be the responsibility of the community. We would like to have the opportunity to work with the planning team and anyone else relevant to this application to find a solution that is acceptable to all concerned in designing the protection, as it will be such a visual part of the development. 2, the 2 objections cited in our report regarding discharging into the River Nith have been ignored in your response. These are important concerns when rivers across the UK are becoming increasingly polluted with human waste. We would ask you to reassure us that any outfall would be tested regularly, or that a solution will be found for avoiding any outfall reaching the river or the salt marsh vegetation. 3, as regards odour and noise, this statement made in the report is not reassuring for those of us who live directly adjacent to the development. Providing that the development operates as designed, it is not considered that the development would give rise to residential amenity concerned by way of noise or odour. This statement gives the impression that you do not actually know whether there would be odour or noise or not. It is also not helpful to say then that if there is odour or noise, we can resort to powers under some other legislation, not specified. We want firm and substantive reassurance that there will not be any odour or noise. 4, concerning the appearance of the vented pipe, we would like to be consulted on the colour used to paint it. To conclude, we would appreciate a more collaborative approach between the Council, Scottish Water and the village residents in the design of this development, given that it's going to affect the appearance, historical and environmental values and livability of this very special place for generations to come. Chair. And the last statement is from William Little, objector. The argument that this is below ground works is disingenuous, and the proposed septic tanks will require substantial uplifting of the existing ground level in order to bury them. Councillors, if this was an application for even a single dwelling house or multi-plot development site, you would throw it out and the applicant would be compelled to install an appropriately sized packaged treatment plant. This would then ensure that the effluent discharge would be of an acceptable level to discharge into an adjacent waterway, if this means of discharge was approved by yourselves. This would normally be normal and commonplace. Such packaged treatment plants can be engineered to the required size. How can it possibly be acceptable then for a new septic tank serving hundreds of houses, a hotel and a restaurant to discharge untreated and polluting effluent into an important river system in the heart of our village? A waterway which is also in an SSSI, used for leisure pursuits and is within a national scenic area. The following information was obtained under a recent FOI request. Neither Scottish Water or SEPA have any idea of the existing water quality in the River Nith, from Dumfries down to the estuary, as they have never carried out any testing. This despite the fact that this stretch of the river contains major discharge locations such as Trepeer Sewage Works and the DuPont tanks at Ayers Point. For comparison, I emailed the Environment Agency for England and laid out the exact situation as pertains in Glencapel, and that the operator of the village septic tank, intending to simply replace it with a larger one and continue to discharge into the adjacent tidal river. Obviously, they assumed that this location was in England. Their response was clear and unequivocal that the septic tank discharge is not clean and that additional secondary treatment would be required, and that even after that they would only approve of discharge into a waterway in exceptional circumstances. This is the situation just a few miles across the Solway, and where just a few years ago they brought in higher standards for septic tanks, and this compels operators to follow the general binding rules. Scotland had the option to follow, but as usual did nothing. So councillors, please show some leadership here. Refuse this application, which can cause unnecessary pollution of important waterway, and help drag our complacent government into its ineffectual agencies from the mid-Victorian era into the 21st century. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Tracy. That concludes the written representations. I'm sure members will take note of that, as I'm sure will the applicants. We now come to the first registered speakers. We have Carla Mann and colleague John Parks, who are appearing on behalf of Scottish Water. If you'd like to come forward, please. You will have 3 minutes to make your collective presentation. I'll remind you 30 seconds to go to bring your presentation to a conclusion, and you know you'll have, I think, 3 members so far looking to ask you very specific questions. So just whenever you're ready, you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Carla, Scottish Water's Planning Advisor. Thank you for the opportunity to present our proposal on essential infrastructure improvement for the village of Glencapel. The current site has only one underground septic tank, which is now almost at capacity. With recent new build homes in Glencapel, a temporary septic tank is in use to avoid overwhelming the existing tank. This solution is not sustainable, as it creates multiple outflow sources and increases environmental risk. Our proposed development is needed to increase the current capacity, allowing all properties to connect to a permanent, robust system. This will eliminate the need for temporary tanks and consolidate outfalls, improving both efficiency and environmental protection. The location is dictated by existing pipework and outfall, which will minimise disruption. We've worked with the community through an engagement event and revised certain design elements to reflect local character, moving the kiosk closer to the street and using timber cladding for visual harmony. By raising the land to cover the tanks, we will create a publicly accessible green space. Our landscaping plan will enhance biodiversity, as well as providing a new viewing point and seating area for both locals and visitors. Whilst we understand the village design statement prefers sandstone, using it here would require extensive excavation for foundations to provide a retaining wall, risking significant environmental damage to the River Nith, along with a long construction period. Instead, we propose rock armour, which is less invasive, allows for biodiversity planting, provides erosion protection, and is a common feature along Scotland's coasts. On the right offers a visual representation of what we believe the development would look like, with a similar photo of the existing site on the left. This is a viewpoint from the quay next to the Boathouse restaurant, looking to the southeast towards the village. This slide shows a viewpoint from the footpath to the south, looking to the north towards the Boathouse restaurant. A new lay-by will allow our tanker to safely access the site without blocking the main road or creating hazards for pedestrians. Removable bollards and grasscrete will ensure the lay-by blends with the green space and remains secure when not in use. In summary, this project is essential for Glencapel now and for its future. It will provide reliable wastewater services for the village and newly built homes, minimise environmental impact by tying into existing infrastructure, create new public green space, enhance biodiversity,
30 seconds to go.
Safety for both pedestrians and road users. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for being so concise. So we have 3 questions for you. The first from Councillor Slater, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you for your report. Yes, the question I asked about was the outflow and what filtration it actually goes through, if any at all. Secondly was the fact that obviously of the vent pipe and any aromas that may come out of it, good or bad, probably bad. There's also a restaurant in that area as well. But the last point was, it's not a planning matter, but it's wet wipes. what happens to them, because they're a major problem for any water company just now, because they're continually having to clean. They have a filter system. I think it's like a rolling type of cylinder that picks up and they can clean the wet wipes off it. So that's really the main three issues that I would like maybe some answers to. Thank you.
John Parks, Environmental Advisor, Scottish Water. So to answer your questions, the septic tank treatment itself is settlement, and within the new septic tank proposal, there are internal baffles within the tank, so that enhances settlement. So materials such as wet wipes are actually caught and then trained within the septic tank and now withdrawn with the regular desludging of the tank, as we've indicated. We estimate that's around about 2 times per year, every 6 months.
In regard to the vent pipe, it's been designed at 4 metres high, which is what our engineers consider a suitable height where any odours, if they were to come out, that would be dispersed into the air. And only where there was any kind of malfunction with or a backup with the septic tank would that cause any sort of lingering odours where it might push odours to the ground where it would linger. So that's for the odour.
Thanks very much for your response. David, that is satisfied?
Well, I must
We're not
admit
going to
that-
revisit wet wipes now.
Sorry?
We're not going to revisit
No,
it.
no, we're not. No, I think you're talking about the weather conditions as well here. What odours come out of that? So you have no real, how can I say, a way of actually knowing what the weather conditions will be. It could be hot weather, it could be windy weather, things like that, and odours obviously go around. But my main thing was the water going into the River Nith. Because this is not planning, but further up the river there's a sewage plant which regularly discharges into the water. I've seen that many times. That's mainly the main thing, how you discharge this water and how do you know it's in really good condition to go back into the sea, or is it just wander across to Workington or something like that? Thank you.
So I think with the settlement, so when septic tanks, they settle, the waste goes to the bottom, and what you get is a collection of water which is not as populated with the stuff that we would not like to go into the sea. It's also important to, so basically it would be the less, you might be able to explain it.
What we've got is the settled sewage. You've got a design standard for dilution dispersing, and given the size of the River Nith and the flow, we know we get appropriate dilution dispersion into the watercourse in an appropriate amount of time. So as it's carried downstream towards the Solway Firth, it further disperses. So the likes of Worthington on the south side of the Solway Firth, it wouldn't have an impact because it's, I wouldn't say infinitely diluted, but it's diluted to an appropriate standard. But we have to comply with that from a SEPA licensing viewpoint.
It's also important to note that there is an existing outfall there in use already, and the proposal that we are putting in, although it's putting in larger tanks, doesn't necessarily mean that there will be more outfall going into the sea. It won't cause that. It's to allow for a larger amount of settlement rather than more outflow, if that.
So,
No, David, we've had enough. We'll continue. There's been a response you've received, and there are agencies in place to deal with any issues that might arise if we approve this application. Councillor Campbell, please.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks very much for your report. I was looking in the case officer's report where it says sandstone would have resulted in a substantially more intrusive and complex approach on site in terms of construction requirements. Now, just for my sort of simple brain, if you've got a block of sandstone of equal size to a block of granite, how does that make it more intrusive or substantially more intrusive and complex?
The difference between granite and sandstone, it's essentially what you've got design standards for a marine structure. Obviously, this is classed as a marine structure. It's below or partially constructed below mean high water springs. The difference being that in terms of the specification or the endurance of that rock, so granite is obviously more robust than sandstone. So if we constructed the retaining wall with sandstone, we'd actually need to install a reinforced concrete wall behind the sandstone wall, and that's why we're saying it's going to take much longer. It's going to be much more complex. Ultimately, it's going to be a potentially bigger impact on the SSI Ramsar opposite. You'd be talking about a much more protracted construction period. Scottish Water, we want to be in and out as quick as we can. So it basically comes down to design standards. Granite is more robust than sandstone. Yes, we could do it in sandstone, but it'd be a bigger impact on the community, a much longer construction period.
Yeah, thanks for that. Earlier on, the case officer showed us a slide, and I think there was 2 layers of granite structure. So would it not have been possible to do a granite structure and then a facing of sandstone? Was that ever on the cards?
I can't answer that question. I'm not the civil engineering designer, but I say it is designed to a specific marine construction standard, and that would require a certain specification of rock at a certain depth.
We'll come back to you, Councillor Campbell.
Yeah, thanks, Chair.
Councillor Drysdale, please.
Thanks very much, Chair. Thanks for the presentation. I'm sorry, I have a number of questions. I think there's 5 in total. So the first question is about the paths. I've just been looking at the diagram, and to me, the path so customers and villagers, locals, tourists would have to go onto the road and use the new lay-by. Can you confirm that that will then join back up with the original path so that people can continue to walk dogs and exercise and use the outside areas? I think I'm right in saying that from the plan. It doesn't come through the new unit itself. So that's my first question. Secondly, can you assure us that you would be, if this goes through today, that you would include experts for plantings, as it is a SSI? It's really important to our communities. It's a very, very scenic and beautiful area that attracts a lot of visitors, and we don't want it spoilt. Nobody wants it spoilt. Will you also assure us today that you would be testing the outfalls regularly, again, because it's a SSI, it's really important. And we've heard earlier in the presentation that doesn't happen often in Scotland. And as councillors, we know how difficult it is to get hold of SEPA to test water for us. Also, will you be doing odour and noise assessments, or have you already done those odour and noise assessments? Because we must listen and communicate with our communities. They are the people that are going to be living with this unit if it goes ahead. And I'm sorry, so many questions. And the colour use on this vented pipe, it's 4 metres high. Will you consult with the community with regards to the colour of that? Again, very, very important. And lastly, I would like to just feed on the back of Councillor Campbell's query and question. I actually walk a lot in Ketford Rockcliffe and see what goes on there and hear what's happening. And we're very clearly hearing today that the community would much prefer there to be a granite finish, a sandstone finish on the edge, the drop armour. So I think really today we need to get into debate about that later, but I think we'd like some assurances that you will listen to the community again. Thank you.
As for the path, I'm sure we can certainly look into creating some kind of steps or something, if that's, is it around the front? Yeah, yeah. I'm sure we can look into ensuring something like that. I did have a discussion with our project manager earlier on, so I think that's something that we can definitely look into including if that would help the community. Trying to remember what else. What was second?
Yep, regarding site restoration and planting, we have carried out ecology surveys of the area, and we would replant or plant appropriate plants in the restored embankment and actually within the rock armour itself. We do intend to fill the voids between the rock armour with soil, so there will be a fast uptake of essentially vegetation greening up the rock armour.
Can I come back just to, through yourself, Chair, because just the questions actually haven't all been answered, sorry. So it was just to ask you, will you be testing regularly because it's a triple SI? And are you going to do any odour noise assessments, and the colour on the 4 metre high tower, if that's what you want, the vented pipe rather? Thanks, those 3 last questions.
Yep, regarding testing, our discharge licence from SEPA, there is actually a sampling schedule, so we do have to sample on a regular basis, and it's what it is, it's based on the population equivalent. So the larger the discharge or the larger the population equivalent, the more times you have to sample per year. I couldn't say offhand what the sampling schedule for Glen Capel is, but there is definitely a statutory mandatory sampling schedule we have to adhere to. Regarding odour and noise, once the installation is complete, effectively there's no moving machinery, so there will not be any noise generation. Obviously there will be during construction, and when the septic tank is desludged, there will obviously be noise when we've got a tanker removing the sludge. Regarding odour, we have got in place, Scottish Water, we have a procedure for handling odour complaints. So the way it's been designed currently, we feel that the dispersion, or what will be the dispersion plume, is adequate. You won't notice that at ground level, but we do have in place an escalation procedure if there are noise complaints.
And the colour, yeah, we're certainly happy to take on board any colour recommendations. I think, David, we might have discussed a colour at some point, but yeah, happy to take any advice from community, and we'll see.
Thanks, Councillor Drysdale. Are there any other questions for the applicant's agents? In that case, thank you both for coming forward. Members, we're now in session, and we can condition things like the path on one of the, I think condition 2 deals with vegetation, and we could add path into that. And then we need to look at the point Councillor Campbell and Councillor Drysdale made about sandstone, bearing in mind what the applicant has said about erosion, which would mean you need to revisit the issue again more rapidly or frequently than if it's, but I'm in your hands, members. I'm looking for proposals, suggestions, or how we deal with this. And if, Councillor Campbell.
No, thanks very much, Chair. Yeah, I think it's one of the biggest concerns for the local community is the appearance. And I would go along with that, actually. I mean, I was looking at the recommendation 2, and it says the planting of appropriate coastal meadow seed mix between the rock crevices. I mean, it's not a great mitigation, in my view. And I seriously think if there's something that we can do, I would approve this if we can get over the hurdle of the sandstone versus the rock armour, the granite rock armour. But I'm happy to listen to other views at this moment in time, Chair, and see where we can take it.
I know it's not being decided today, but we could delegate the officers to ensure a proportion of sandstone is introduced somewhere, especially at the higher level, because the applicant's agent did say that at certain times of the year where the level of the water or the sea, the stone would be covered, so we could maybe delegate the officers to discuss and ensure that some degree of sandstone is introduced to soften the appearance. And we could add into recommendation to the retention of a footpath or the replacement of an existing footpath as part of the conditions. But I'm in your hands, members. Councillor Slater.
Yes, Chair, I was just at the fact of the effluent going into Solway. Obviously, that's to do with tide as such, to get rid of it and disperse it all over the place. But I just would like to see really regular testing on this, especially in the early days, to see what the water quality is like and if anything they do to improve it. And that's important because it is being discharged into the Solway. Thank you.
We can't, that's not a planning condition, that'll be a requirement placed on the applicant by SEPA and other bodies, although I'm sure your environmental standards would have something to say if they failed that test, but that's not something we condition today. So I have a proposal, Councillor Drysdale.
Yeah, I don't think Councillor Campbell's actually needs seconded on this one, but I would support him in that we need to somehow embed into the conditions that the planning department listen to what the community are asking for here. So whether it's some kind of use of the granite underneath the sandstone and planting on top, and if we can condition in that there will be experts used for the planting as it's a triple SI and to mitigate any viewing point damage, as well as conditioning in the path, thank you Chair, which you've alluded to. We need to make sure that happens. And it seems as if Scottish Water are willing to listen to that. And I would also condition in that they make sure to speak to the community with regards to some sort of comms with regards to the colour of the vented pipe. Thank you, Chair.
The only concern I have, what we do has to be fair and reasonable. So I'll ask Mr. Sutty to give some guidance on what element of that's fair and reasonable.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, sort of listening carefully to what was being said by both the applicant and members of the public. If members are minded to go with, effectively, if I'm correct in what Councillor Campbell is saying, you're looking for a sandstone veneer almost on top of the granite. I do accept that granite is a stronger, longer lasting stone, which would make sense to have as the base for it. But I would not like to have a condition that actually then renders the whole development unimplementable because we're not engineers. I don't know the technicalities of it. I would suggest having a condition that is suitably worded that puts the onus on them to actually come up as applicants with a scheme that shows how it can be dealt with as making as much sandstone on it, be it, even if that's just a veneer, a sacrificial one, which maybe needs to be replaced every so often, if that really is appropriate. That would be one condition. I would like, on that basis, you'd need to amend condition 2 and really just have that as the planting, that you'd be looking, the reseeding, the soft landscaping to go on, and take out that last line about the rock crevices and rock armour. That wouldn't be applicable any longer. I think I'll be more comfortable with a freestanding condition about an access of the path through the site rather than trying to feed it into condition 2 on reflection. There is condition 4, you'll note already, which is to do with the finish of the ventilation column. You cannot competently delegate that you have a condition that requires the community to be consulted about something and everybody then agrees on it. That wouldn't be possible. It has to come down to a decision of the council as the planning authority on that. So I think you've got a competent condition there that covers that already, but we've heard the discussion. We'd want to make sure it is something which is sympathetic and appropriate, and I'm sure the applicant would want to do so as well. So just in summary, I think you need to amend condition 2, if that's what you're wanting, have a freestanding set of conditions on the path going through the site and seeking further details about the external appearance, using as much sandstone as possible on the, I was going to call it rock armour, but might not really be a rock armour finish, it's just the edge of it. Hope that helps, Chair.
And that would be delegated to officers, David.
As most suspensive conditions would be, yes.
How about you, Councillor Campbell? Are you happy with that?
I'm content with that, Chair, absolutely. At least that way we are listening to the local community, and I'd be happy to approve on those amendments. Thanks.
Councillor Drysdale, are you content?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Chair.
Are there any alternative views? In that case, Tracy, can you confirm the decision of the committee, please, including the new conditions?
Thank you, Chair. So members have agreed to approve the application, subject to the amendment at condition 2, which would remove the references to the rock crevices and armour. An additional 2 new conditions, one conditioning a path, and the second condition for the introduction of as much sandstone on the top of the granite as possible, but left to delegated to officers. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much, Tracy. Thanks, members. We're going to agenda item number 5. An application for A, the installation of flue to east elevation of dwelling house, erection of detached domestic garage and boundary wall, installation of replacement doors to existing domestic garage and bollard retrospective, and B, late listed building consent for installation of flue to east elevation of dwelling house and installation of replacement garage doors to existing domestic garage at Applegarth, Harbour Road, Wigtown. The application type A, full application, and B, listed building consent. The reference numbers are A, 25/1507/full, and B, 25/1509/LBC. Recommendation for both A and B is approved unconditionally. The case officers Archie Mortiboy. So Archie, good morning again. Will you take us through your presentation, please?
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, members. Yes, there's 2 applications here for retrospective plan permission and listed building consent at Applegarth and Wigtown, which is a Category C listed building. It's also within Wigtown's conservation area, and it's in front of members today as there has been 6 or more objections to both applications. This first slide is showing the 1 to 2500 location plan on the right hand side, which shows the property in relation to the surrounding area. You can just about see the red boundary outline. And on the left hand side, we've got a 1 to 500 site plan, which depicts the site boundary in better detail and it annotates the work that's already been carried out. Onto the elevations, and along the top of this drawing you have the existing rear and side elevations, while the bottom half shows the proposed elevations, illustrating where the new flow extraction point is on the rear of the building. On the left of this slide is a 1 to 50 plan of the new boundary wall that has been constructed out the front of the property. On the right hand side you've got the proposed front and side elevations of the wall in relation to the dwelling. This drawing shows the front elevation of both garages, with the top one being after the unauthorised works had been carried out, while the bottom half shows the proposed elevation and what is now in place. In the middle of the drawing as well, you've got the elevations of the existing garage that was there but has now been demolished and replaced with the new garage. On the left hand side of this drawing you have the new garage elevations and floor plan, which replaced the garage that has been demolished, while on the right is the new timber doors that have been installed on the other garage that's there. Onto the photos, and the one on the left is the view facing north along Harbour Road up towards Applegarth, which is just behind the bushes on the right, and the photo on the left is facing east east along South Main Street. The photo on the left is a screenshot from Google Street View that shows the condition of the existing garage doors that have now been replaced by the timber doors on the right-hand side there. On the right-hand side of that right-hand photo, you can also just about see the new garage that is now in place. These are just some closer-up photos of the new garage that's been constructed. These are two photos of the new boundary wall that was built at the front of the property. The photo on the left was taken to show the distance between the wall and the road, while the one on the right just is to show the detail of the wall. And this final photo is just to illustrate where the flue has been installed. You can see it just on the right-hand side there of the building. The main concerns with this application is the effect the proposal will have on the Category C listed building and the surrounding conservation area. Aside from the flue, all the work that has already been done doesn't directly affect the listed building itself, and it's also worth mentioning that had this application not been done on a listed building, then the flue would have been classed as the permitted development. The only parts of this application that are largely visible in the surrounding area are the new boundary wall, new timber garage, doors and the steel bollards, with the rest of the work that has been carried out not being visible from the majority of the surrounding area, with the work that can be seen being designed in a way as to not negatively affect the conservation area. Therefore, both applications are recommended for unconditional approval. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Archie. Any questions for our case officer? Councillor Drysdale, please.
Thanks, Chair. Thank you, Archie, for the presentation. Do you mind going back to the photographs again quickly for me? It was just to ask you if you can confirm with me that the surround is green. Is that right? And just show me where the bollards are. Sorry, I missed that.
Sorry, that's
Thank you.
fine.
Thanks a lot.
As you can see now, the outside of that, the framing of the timber doors is green because there's a roller door behind that timber door which was installed first, but now those timber doors are now on top of those, so that's why the framing of that is green, was to match those roller doors. And you can just about see the bollard in the middle of the photo on the right, just in front of the door, and there's also one just behind that car. Yeah, there you go. There's also one behind the car in front of the garage.
So can we just go through yourself, Chair? What is the purpose of the bollards? Is that to stop cars parking there? And also, is that green painted on? Is it a paint or is it a green steel? Or
It'll be painted, I imagine. I spoke to the applicant and he told me that he had issues with insurance for his cars, so that is why the steel bollards were installed, to help him gain insurance, basically.
Thank you, Councillor Drysdale. Any other questions for our case officer? In that case, I don't see anyone. We come to our next registered speakers, who are Glynis Hamilton first, an objector via Microsoft Teams, followed by Andrew McConnell. So Glynis, if you're with us, would you want to join us, please? If we can't find Glynis, we'll go to Andrew McConnell first and then come back to meet Glynis. Andrew, good morning, sir. I'm sure you've been watching what's been going on. You will be allowed a 3-minute window of opportunity to address the committee. I'll remind you with 30 seconds to go to make your presentation to a conclusion, and you'd be kind enough to wait in case the members of the committee have questions for you. I'd be grateful. So just whenever you're ready, sir. Thank you. You're muted, Andrew.
Is that better now? Can you hear me?
We're struggling with volume at the moment.
I'll keep talking so you can test the volume. Can you hear me?
Can we do anything our side to increase the volume? No.
Could you please turn up your microphone volume?
in the bottom right-hand side of your PC, I would think, somewhere.
Is that any better?
It's getting better, yes. Can you try and add some more?
I'm at max, I'm afraid. Would you like me to submit my statement in the chat function?
That's better now. That's very good now. If you continue now at that volume, that would be great, Andrew. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. Having read all of the documents on the portal, I'm a bit disappointed by the committee report recommending approval, as I think it misses out on some key issues relating to this application, which I'll try and summarise briefly. First of all, these applications are retrospective, of course, and they are the result of public complaints to enforcement, and I think that context is important. My second point is that I don't think the conservation area has been sufficiently taken into account in the officer's consideration. Whilst reference has been made to the listed building, the whole point of conservation area status is to offer some protection to the built heritage of the public realm, the established views within the conservation area, and the character of the town. The impact of the conservation area should have been a key consideration listed under point 4 in the report, and it hasn't been. The third point is on the quality of materials and design used. The assertions in the report that the design and materials of the garage and front boundary wall are acceptable is inconsistent with the design guidance for a conservation area, where high quality materials and design sympathetic to the traditional character of the conservation area should be employed. I was wondering, has there been a consultation with the Council's own built heritage officer on justifying the quality of design, materials used, and the impact on the character of the conservation area, as it is lacking in the committee report? My fourth point is on road safety. Several of the objections submitted refer to the impact on road safety as a result of this development. The Community Council submission also highlights the location as a long-standing issue, now compounded by this unauthorised development. The usable width of the carriageway has been reduced, and as pedestrian safety is impacted, a consultation with the Roads Department would surely, presumably, have been undertaken, and yet this doesn't appear within the report. Also missing from the report is any discussion whether the applicant should be required to build a pavement, as that might reasonably have been expected. My final point is on ownership boundaries. The committee report fails to scrutinise the applicant's assertion of ownership and their assumed right to develop within the public realm and to install a flue at that location, despite it being stated in numerous objections. The red line boundary shown in the application site plan that you've seen this morning actually includes the rear area of the garden of number 17 Bank Street, which the applicant does not own. Given the unusual nature of the situation, claiming ground in the public realm, and with the boiler flue at the back of the building, I would expect the report...
30 seconds to go.
I'd have expected the report to have input from roads, property and legal as to the definitive extent of ownership. If you have a look in the Registers of Scotland website under title WGN 480, you can see that the applicant has developed on land in the public realm that they do not own, and that the flue is on the boundary and terminates into a neighbour's property. I can provide a photo from the neighbour's garden to show this, and also a link to the Registers of Scotland record, which is of course in the public domain.
That's
Together,
3 minutes up, Andrew.
Thank you.
Thanks very much for your presentation today. Members, do any member of the committee have any questions for Andrew on his presentation? Councillor Slater, followed by Councillor Campbell.
Yes, thank you for your presentation, Andrew. Yes, I see you're obviously concerned about land ownership here. Has that been established, or is it still to be established who owns parts of this land? And also the fact that it's retrospective as well. Thank you.
It's a civil matter, David.
Okay.
We don't establish land ownership.
Okay.
And we are aware that it is a late or a retrospective application, so that's fine. Councillor Campbell, please.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Andrew, for your presentation. Yeah, I did notice the Royal Borough of Wigton District Community Council, where they mentioned there's no footpath and the wall reduces the width of the carriageway. I was quite surprised there was no roads report in this application, but I mean, that's something that we could pick up in session if you want, Chair. I don't know if Andrew wants to add
Aye,
to that.
because that, I don't think that'd be a question for Andrew, that'd be one for our case officer. Any other questions for Andrew? In that case, Andrew, thank you very much for coming forward today, and thanks for your presentation, sir. I believe we now have Glynis Hamilton on. Good morning, Glynis. I don't think maybe you were able to hear what we were saying earlier, but you will have 3 minutes to make a presentation to the committee. I will remind you with 30 seconds to go to draw your presentation to a conclusion, and if you'd be kind enough to wait in case any members have any questions for you, I'd be grateful. So your 3 minutes will start just whenever you're ready, Glynis. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I appreciate the time to have a say. My main concern is actually the flue that was installed at the gable end of Applegarth. It's actually, looking at the plans, the drawn plans, looks as if it's in Applegarth grounds, whereas it's not. It's actually in Benton into my own garden. There's a shed below the vent, which I use on a daily basis. And obviously any time I'm out, there appears to be the fumes and exhausts, etc. coming from it. I do understand, after speaking to the installer, that all appropriate and correct equipment was used to install it. But I did question at the time also the amount of noise that this boiler emits. It's actually so bad that you can hear it from my front door in Bank Street, which is a good 50 metres away, maybe even longer. Other people have actually commented on it as well, other neighbours. It also means that obviously I can't use my garden, at least it puts me off from using my garden, the noise and the fumes. I can't use it the way I would like to. And I know this is maybe quite a selfish point of view, but I do feel that given the fact that this was installed from my garden without my knowledge, without any communication from the owner of Applegarth prior to this, with him actually then telling me that he owns my shed, which again is inaccurate according to the plans from the drawings from Applegarth. So really, yes, I'm really quite annoyed all round about the flue. Regarding the wall at the front of Applegarth that he has built, I do think that it actually impinges in pedestrians walking, and also the fact that there is not enough room to turn for vehicular reasons, etc. on that corner. It was a bad corner prior to them building this, and I do think that they've blamed land that actually technically wasn't theirs.
You have 30 seconds to go.
And then again, I do agree with what Andrew had said regarding the roads department not actually being involved in this, and it should have had some kind of consultation.
Thanks very much, Glynis, and thanks for your presentation. Do any members have any questions for Glynis? In that case, thank you very much for being here today, Glynis. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
There are no other registered speakers, members, so we're in session. Councillor Campbell, please.
Yes, just to pick up on the roads department, why that's not in the report.
Archie, do you have any information from the roads department, or were they consulted as part of your dealing with this report?
I didn't consult them, no, but because of the location plan, I've been told previously that because it's not on the boundary, roads have no jurisdiction over it, and because it's within the alleged boundary of Applegarth, they have no jurisdiction over what happens with it unless it was on the boundary itself.
Okay, can you offer any advice, Mr. Sutty, firstly on whether or not we can ask roads for the review, and on the issues about installing apparatus over someone else's garden ground, if that is indeed the case.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I mean, Archie is correct in what he says, that we wouldn't normally consult with roads where there's no new access being formed, and quite clearly you've got an existing garage which was then removed using an existing access, and another garage with just the door being replaced. So for those reasons there was no justification for consulting roads. In terms of the actual application, I've got it open in front of me. It is clearly shown within the red line boundary of the application site, and the application form states that all the land within the application site is within the ownership of the applicant, Mr. Jennings. So it becomes a little bit more of a civil matter where one party is saying they own the land, and we have to go on the basis in good faith of what has been submitted, and it's quite clear what's been submitted shows this in here. If it isn't within the ownership of the applicant, then you're really talking about air rights as such. You've got the flue would actually be projecting out over somebody else's land, but we have no evidence to that basis at the moment. We just have to go in good faith of what's been submitted. Through yourself, Chair, it might be worth getting comments from Laura in that respect.
Very good thought. Laura, can you provide some advice to elected members, please?
Thank you, Chair. At the moment, I'm looking on Scotland, which is the Registers of Scotland's website, and there does appear to be a discrepancy between the red outline that's been submitted and which the applicant has certified that they own, and what Scotland shows that the applicant owns. I don't know whether, Chair, that's sufficient for members to want this matter to be adjourned, perhaps to another meeting for investigations, if there's a feeling that perhaps there is a mismatch between what the applicant has asserted and what the public register shows.
Given the objections and the reasons for objections, it might be prudent to do that in members' hands. Would members want to adjourn until a further date? And if so, remind me again what information, additional information you might require, which might include roads. So I have Pauline Drysdale, Councillor Drysdale, and we don't need everybody to say this. If we've got a proposer and a seconder, we'll go beyond that and see if there are any alternative views. So I've got Councillor Drysdale, Councillor Hislop, Councillor Slater, and then Councillor McFarlane. Councillor Drysdale, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think we should hold on this application until we've got the absolute correct legal layout and some sort of input from roads. As Laura has mentioned, that the document is not quite factually correct, which is putting us in a bit of a position. So I would support that. But also I did want to say, with your permission, Chair, that this is a retrospective application in a conservation area where we need to look at the quality and design of materials as well. So when we're looking at page 37 on 4.5 LDP 2 policy H8 states that alterations to dwellings should be taking into concise external materials that are sympathetic to the scale and character of the host dwelling. In this host dwelling, the surroundings of the windows are black. The garage should have had a more sympathetic approach in terms of design. So if we bring it back to committee, we can talk about that at a later date in the recommendations. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, and there's also the opportunity to have a site visit. Know that I'm proposing one, but if there are so many factors that you want to explore, maybe it's an opportunity to do that. But at the moment, I defer only from Councillor Drysdale, followed by Councillor Hislop, please.
Chair, custom and practice has been that we accept the applicant's word on this. By changing that, yes, we have information that has been brought forward today, but we've never questioned that before. Does that have any impact on previous decisions? Or if we can't access something the next time, does that have an impact going forward? I have no problem if somebody wants to go for a site visit to see that corner, but I have a bit of a view that previously we've always accepted what the applicant has said, and now we're actually being asked to change that. I'm just on a governance view on that one.
I will ask governance view on it, but every application is treated its own merit. Any decision made in the past will be valid and be supported, I would imagine, by officers. Governance, Tracy, do you have a view on this? Because we have been given legal advice that's legitimate and I think relevant to this particular application. Tracy?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I would agree that each application is taken its own merits, and it's for members to decide whether they've got sufficient information in front of them to determine each application. So if members feel that they need to adjourn or defer an item for further information, that's completely in members' hands. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor. I'll go to Councillor Slater and then Councillor McFarlane.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I would support Councillor Drysdale on this.
Okay, Councillor Andy McFarlane, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I was just going to ask if it was possible for Laura to share what it was that she was looking at in order to give us oversight of that to help us perhaps make a decision in this. However, I've just looked in the chat and Andrew McConnell's posted something and I don't know if that's the same thing.
Well, we don't usually allow objectives to post anything in the chat, and there are rules at the start of the meeting saying that nothing should be posted in the chat that forms part of the discussion. But if Laura can share that with us, but irrespective of that, Laura has given us clear legal advice as our professional that the boundaries don't appear to match, and that should be sufficient information for us to make a valued judgment. But I'll see if Laura can do that. In the meantime, Councillor Dryborough, welcome, Councillor Dryborough. Come in, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I think this is quite clear. I mean, we've obviously been given legal advice from our legal officer that the information may be incorrect. I'm not saying it isn't, but it may be incorrect. I think it would be safest just to defer until we get the fullest of information and the most up-to-date information for that. So I would support deferring.
So we have a proposal to defer by Councillor Drysdale, supported by Councillor Slater, and Councillor Dryborough has all made that opinion clear. We'll see if Laura can share them up, but I don't think it's relevant. We've made a decision to defer. I am sure that in the new report we get, or revised report, we can have that information printed for each member. So what exactly, in terms of information, are we looking for? Do we want only a definitive answer on who owns what land? Or do we want a response from roads, which is unusual? Do we want any other information? Because I wouldn't want us to meet in a month or 2 months' time and then go round again looking for additional information. There's the map, although it's relatively small in scale. Well, there you are. Thanks, Laura. And can you highlight where the differential is, please, Laura, for us?
Yes, Chair. I'm just about to put also the map that was submitted by the applicant. You'll see that on the applicant, apologies, I'm not as good as a planner when I'm giving compass directions, but when you're looking at it, you've got a straight red line at the rear of the property going across, and that's on the line drawing. Whereas above that, what I have shared from ScotList, you'll see that it is not a straight line. It goes along, then it comes down, then it goes along, and also there's a darker rectangle in the middle that when you click on that on the land register, it says that that portion, the dark rectangle, is not on the land register, it's on the Register of Seasons. But it doesn't automatically appear to form part of the title of Applegarth. There would need to be further investigation, but certainly when you compare the area to the right of that dark rectangle, it would not appear to be within the title of Applegarth, and yet on the red line that has been put forward as a boundary within Applegarth. There also, to my eyes, Chair, would appear to be a slight discrepancy on where the road verges to the front. On the red line boundary, there's quite a nice smooth curve but when you actually look at what the title shows, which is what's there just now, it's not such a smooth curve. There would appear to be a section there that doesn't look to be included within the title. And if members are concerned about where the extent of the road boundary is, they may wish roads to comment on that.
Thank you. Councillor Hislop, please.
Chair, can we have clarification? From my reading of the two maps, I'm using the one that's on the agenda page. If you look at the building, the red line comes right the way along to the end of the building and then cuts back. So he's actually not got all the land that he does own, according to the Scottish map, or whatever you call it. Because the part from the edge of the building next to the greyed out bit isn't within our map on here, because it comes right along the edge of the building to the end of the building, then goes down. So he's actually cut a bit that doesn't exist, or a bit of his isn't in there. My reading of the map.
So can you take that map back a bit, Abby, so as the red line might be superimposed upon the, and if you can, it won't matter, because what we can do, and I don't mean it won't matter, that's not what I mean. What we could do, we now have the opportunity for a recess where we can discuss these items and maybe suggest that we do that next time round. We have the original map. Thanks very much, Abby, that's really helpful. So you can see the red line where the applicant claims ownership, and the map that our legal officer Laura has superimposed, or one upon the other. They certainly don't marry. So I would suggest that we have a deferral and we get some detailed information for next month before we sit down again. Councillor Haslam.
Chair, but if you take the map that's in the page and you've got the building that's there, now the square box of the building in here, the boundary is straight along the edge of that building. So are you saying that actually part of the building doesn't belong to the applicant?
I'll ask Mr. Sutty to help.
Thanks, Chair. It's maybe just to give a word of caution about the scale of plans and the reliance that's being put on them. If you're looking on the one on page 31, it's clearly marked as for illustrative purposes only. The scale of that, the Ordnance Survey is just going to show buildings as a block. The more you zoom in, the more detail that you actually get. And certainly we have dealt with the application in good faith, because that is what the applicant has said. They've certified to it. If there's one party saying something about whether or not they have an ownership in issue, that normally does fall into a civil matter if there's a dispute. But what we're being advised at committee today from Laura is actually looking at the title deeds, there is a clear ambiguity, and in those instances I think we need to defer the application to go back to the applicant and get them to certify the forms correctly. Do they own that land? If they don't own that land, they need to revise the application, and they also need to notify the owners. So although it is, that flue is only air rights, it's not something on the ground, it's just projecting over somebody else's property, that nonetheless would change the certification that's been given with the application. So I don't think we're in a position to give a safe decision at the moment. So for those reasons, I certainly would urge that you do defer it now on the basis of the information that's come forward today.
I will invite Councillor McFarlane to have the last word, and then we're going to defer this to a future meeting. Councillor McFarlane, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think I'm really just going to support what David Suttish just said. From personal circumstances, I had a situation where a relative was selling a property, and when we got to it, I know that the regulator, they're digitising their records, and they don't completely match up with what we had was the analogue, and therefore you do get that discrepancy. So I think it's really upon us to go back to the applicant and make sure that they can certify that they do actually own that, and it's for them to employ somebody to do that and provide that information.
Thanks for your support, Councillor McFarlane. I always did say Councillor McFarlane to the last word, Councillor Hislop, however.
Just one thing, when you're dealing with the say-scenes, it's not the map you go by, it's the written word, so you would need the written word to just clarify.
I'm quite confident that between our legal services team, our planning officers and anyone else that's involved, we'll get a resolution before this paper comes back to us. So on that basis, we've simply deferred this agenda item 5 for additional information. Do you want to qualify what that information is, Tracy?
Thank you, Chair. So I've noted here that members would like to defer consideration of this application to allow a request to be made to the applicant on the accuracy of the ownership within the boundaries relating to this development, and also seeking comments from roads on the accuracy of the road verges.
Thank you, Tracy. Move on to agenda item 6. A consultation from Scottish ministers regarding an application made under section 36 of the Electricity Act 1989 for erection of a wind farm comprising of 14 wind turbines, maximum tip 12 turbines of 250 metres, 2 turbines of 210 metres, and associated infrastructure works including turbine foundations, hard standings, new and upgraded access tracks, including watercourse crossings, passing places, turning heads and site entrance from the public road network, up to 5 borrow pits, substation and construction compounds, communications mast, underground cabling, forestry operations, signage and habitat management and biodiversity enhancement, a proposed Blair Hill Wind Farm north of Minigaff, Newton Stewart. This is a section 36 consultation, reference number 25/0367/S36. Officers recommend that we raise an objection, and our case officer is Neil Simpson. Good afternoon, Neil. Will you take us through your presentation, please?
Thank you, Chair. It is good afternoon, and good afternoon, members. Yeah, this is as Chair was describing, this application falls under Section 36 of the Electricity Act 1989 with Energy Consent Unit reference ECU 00004878, and as such, Dumfries and Galloway are consultees to the scheme, and third-party representations are made directly to the Scottish ministers, who are the determining authority. Under the Dumfries and Galloway scheme of delegation, responses to consultations on national or major developments such as this, which do not require the permission of the council as the planning authority, are required to be considered by the council's planning application committee, which is why we're here today. The formal deadline for the consultation response was extended, until 31st of October 2025, with the agreement of the Scottish Government's Energy Consents Unit and of the applicant. This means that the committee's decision today will be deemed to be in time. Okay, so here we have the location plan. The Blair Hill site is to the east of the Cree Valley, to the north of Newton Stewart and Minigaff, fully within the boundary of the Galloway Hills regional scenic area. As noted, the proposed scheme consists of 14 wind turbines with a total generating capacity of approximately 92.4 megawatts. As part of the deliberation of any nationally significant renewable energy scheme, MPF4 requires that we consider the benefits of the scheme. When fully operational, the site is expected to provide an installed capacity of, as I said, of 92.4 megawatts. The applicant has provided an estimate that this installed capacity could generate enough to power around 115,700 homes, annually saving approximately 161,198 tonnes of carbon dioxide per year, amounting to over 8 million tonnes over its expected 50-year operational life. The location plan, if you move on to the next screen, we've got the layout of the turbines within the site. You can just proceed through these slides now. Okay, so the cumulative impacts for the wind turbines. There are a number of other wind farms in the area, mainly, but it's important to note that there aren't any in the immediate location. Most of the existing or consented wind farms are to the north or to the west, and there's some further to the east. There is a pending application for Glenvernick, just across the Cree Valley. Okay, so that there are various sensitive heritage sites. Again, just proceed through these. The full details are available on the ECU website with the submitted environmental impact assessment. The council's flood risk management, roads planning team and environmental health officers were all consulted and responded with no objections subject to conditions. In the event of any subsequent approval by the Scottish ministers, it would be anticipated that these conditions would form part of that approval. The council's advising landscape architect recommends that the council objects to the application on the landscape plan. And I'd like to draw the members' attention that the committee report includes the full landscape report as an appendix, as it was considered to be key to the report's recommendations. Okay, just proceed, I think, coming through. Okay, so here are the key viewpoints as submitted. This is based on the submitted landscape and visual impact assessment, which the landscape consultant has advised on. So we've got various viewpoints with mock-ups of how they would appear with the wind turbines in place. I think there's about 20 viewpoints. If you just scroll through, it'll give the members a good idea, and the members of the public good idea of what the considered impacts would be in terms of visual impact. While that's going through, I'll say that the landscape officer advises that the impacts would be considered to be significant based on the fact that the turbines would all be within the boundary of the Galloway Hills scenic area, and it would have direct effects on the scenic area, as well as impacting on views from out with the area where the landscape contributes to the wider scenery. And they note particularly the views to the hills from across Wigtown Bay, as far as Wigtown Bay from the coast, and within the peripheral valleys, and also impacting the setting of the Galloway Hills, the character and scenery of the Cree Valley, and as we've just seen, Wigtown and Cree coastal fringes as well. It would also impact visitors and residents of Newtown Stewart. The introduction of lighting under this is just a summary of all the landscape impacts. So again, number 2, the introduction of lighting under the proposal would adversely impact the special qualities of the Galloway Forest Dark Sky Park area. The Cree and Penkiln valleys on their upper slopes towards the moors of Granadale and Glenmalloch Hills, respectively, would be impacted. The scale and siting of the turbines would appear incongruous and overwhelming on the landscape character and experience, detracting from the backdrop setting and views of Lag, Lamacan and Garlick Hills. The proposal would also extend wind farm development into an area with no current characterization of development. It currently represents an important gap between large and emerging clusters of wind farms to the west and to the east of the Glen Cairns. The development would be therefore at odds with the existing wind farm pattern and would be contrary to local plan policy IN2 and supplementary guidance for wind energy development. When viewed in the context of existing wind energy development, the proposal would give rise to significant cumulative impacts on the landscape character. So what's already there in place, if this was recommended for approval, the landscape value of the Galloway Hills scenic area and the wider area would all be significantly impacted. And then finally, due to the very large scale of the turbines and the footprint and orientation of the layout. The scheme is considered to be incongruous and of poor design in the context of the sensitive landscape and the existing pattern of development. And that would therefore be considered to be at variance with local development plan policies, OP2, IN2, NE8, and supplementary guidance for wind energy development management considerations. And that concludes the presentation. And the recommendation for the members is to raise objections. Thank you. If you've got any questions, I'm here to address them.
Thanks very much, Neil. Thanks for your quick presentation, your quick skip through these images. Members, any questions for our case officer? I don't see any, Neil, so thanks very much for your presentation. Members, we're in session. Councillor Campbell.
Go with the recommendations, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dryborough.
I agree with that, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor McFarlane.
No, simply try to second, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you very much. If there are no alternative views, just confirm the decision of the committee, please, Tracy.
Thanks, Chair. Members have agreed to raise objections to the consultation. Thank you.
Members, it's just a back of 12. Lunch has arrived. One's the end item to go. We'll just continue and complete and then stop for lunch thereafter, or does somebody want to come for a break now? Bang on. You sure? My tummy thinks my throat's cut. Move on to agenda item number 7. This is a consultation regarding an application made under Section 36 of the Electricity Act 1989 for the erection of 29 wind turbines, variable tip height with the maximum being up to 230 metres, an energy storage system, ESS, with up to 90 megawatt capacity, a control building and substation, anemometer mast, maximum height 155 metres, and associated access and infrastructure. Total generating capacity will be in excess of 50 megawatts. MW AD consent is sought for 40 years operation from the date of commissioning at proposed Revox Wind Energy Hub, Lowther Hills, approximately 7 kilometres to the west of Moffat. This is again a Section 36 consultation. The recommendation is to raise no objection, and the case officer is Robert Duncan. Good afternoon, Robert. You want to take us through your presentation, please?
Good afternoon, Chair. Happy to do so. Just looking at the first slide that you have in front of you. This is the title page. This is an application made under Section 36 of the Electricity Act, like the previous case of 1989, where the Scottish Government are the determining authority and the Council acts as a statutory consultee. As per paragraph 1.3 of the report in front of you at pages 181 and 182, this consultation was received on the 19th of July 2023, and the formal deadline for the consultation response from the Council was not previously extended beyond the original 4-month response date. The result is that if the Council is minded to formally object to this proposal as a consultee, a public local inquiry would not automatically be triggered. So that's the difference from the previous case. So moving on to the next slide, this is a layout plan. It shows the proposed wind turbines at the site. The proposed development is located within the area to the west of Moffat and also to the west of the A74M and close to the boundary with the South Lanarkshire Council area, which so you can just see that on the left-hand side of this slide. The proposal is described at paragraph 1.6 of the report in front of you at page 101, and this is an application for 29 proposed wind turbines and the battery energy storage system and ancillary infrastructure at this location. So the next slide shows a more detailed view of the northern part of the site, so you might be able to make out the salient features more clearly here. The blue dots with black crosses superimposed on them, which are numbered, represent the location of the proposed turbines. The blue and black lines indicate proposed access tracks, and the kind of small buff areas, if you can see them, indicate areas of proposed hard standing next to the turbines themselves. The pink areas on this plan represent proposed construction compounds, and the site edge, the application site edge, is defined by the red line shown there. The next plan shows a similar layout plan, but this is concentrating on the southern part of the application site. You'll see the red line there, which is the proposed access route connecting the application site from the A701 public road from the location of the existing timber transport route junction. The next plan is showing the key constraints in relation to the application site and its surroundings. The red dots indicate the location of dwelling houses in relation to this site. The jade ribbon passing through the site from north-west to south-east is the Southern Upland Way, and that is shown with a 200-metre buffer zone either side. The red line surrounding this indicates the application site boundary, and the areas shown in either grey, yellow, light green, dark green and buff indicate areas where peat depth is less than 3 metres. Each colour represents a different peat depth category, if you like. Again, the blue dots with black crosses superimposed, which are numbered, represent the location of the proposed turbines. The next slide is my own annotation from the Council's GIS system. It's cumulative wind farm development in the vicinity of the proposal. This is listing the projects which have either been refused or withdrawn previously, with the exception of the Earl's Hawk proposal in the Scottish Borders, which you can see top right, and the proposed Spangle wind farm near Kirkconnell, which is on top left of this slide. This reflects what is listed in your report at section 1.13 on pages 192 to 194 in the papers. As a note, the proposed development at Rivox is located just to the east of Dar Reservoir, near the hills part of the Lowther Hills annotation, so it's not actually shown in this diagram. So what you're looking at are a range of previous proposals which were either refused or withdrawn. The next slide is showing undetermined wind farm applications in close proximity to the application site. So for the avoidance of doubt, the Rivox proposal on this slide is represented by the amber dots located on the green forested background in the centre, whereas the Dar proposal is represented by the amber dots located to the east, west rather, of the Rivox proposal on the light brown unforested background. The status of these cases is as listed in the report at section 1.13 on pages 192 to 194 of your papers. So, in brief summary, the Dar proposal is an undetermined Section 36 application, which was the subject of an objection by this Council as a statutory consultee back on the 30th of November 2023. The Hairstains West proposal is also an undetermined Section 36 application, which has been the subject of consultation with this Council as a statutory consultee, but has not yet been reported to this Planning Applications Committee, so that's still to come in front of you. The Hairstains South proposal is an undetermined Section 36 application, which was the subject of an objection by this Council as a statutory consultee back on 30th of August 2024. And the Scoop Hill proposal on the right-hand side there is an undetermined Section 36 application as well, which was the subject of an objection by this Council as a statutory consultee back on the 22nd of March 2024. Now that triggered a public local inquiry which concluded earlier this year, and a decision from the Scottish Ministers is still awaited following the conclusion of that PLI. So for the avoidance of doubt, what you're looking at on the slide here has not yet been formally determined. Moving on to the next slide, this is showing the locations of nearby approved applications. And just off the screen to the southwest, I should point out you've got the established Dalswinton wind farm there. And also it's understood that the Crooked Stane and Lion Hill proposals in South Lanarkshire Council, just to the north of this proposal, have not yet been implemented. The next slide is showing a closer view of part of the application site and the location of the proposed wind turbines. As per paragraph 1.6 of the report in front of you, 21 of these proposed wind turbines would measure 230 metres from base to tip, and 8 would measure 200 metres from base to tip. The location of the proposed Darwin turbines can be seen to the west. This proposal is mainly located within the South Lanarkshire Council area that you can see annotated, but you can see the location of the 5 proposed Darwin turbines just on the left-hand side there in that blue cross-hatched area because they are situated within the Thornhill Upland Regional Scenic Area. You can see that none of the proposed turbines at Rivox are located within that regional scenic area, but they are located in very close proximity to it. The other thing to note from this slide is the location of the Southern Upland Way. So that's the chain of red dots stretching across the application site just to the right of centre. Again, that's northwest to southeast generally. So the next slide is an error from the draft presentation, so I wouldn't pay much attention to that. The only difference from the previous slide is the fact there's an arrow pointing to the Southern Upland Way. So swiftly moving on. The next slide shows the pattern of cumulative wind farms, and that's up to 45 kilometres from the proposed development. Members should note this dates back to before the proposal was submitted in 2023, so it's a wee bit out of date. The proposed development can be seen in the middle of this diagram with adjacent turbine development and applications. Implemented developments are shown in blue on this diagram, with undetermined applications at the time of preparation shown in a kind of light brown buff colour. The next slide shows a diagram lifted from the EIA report, where it is contained as figure 5.16a of chapter 5 of volume 3a. It shows a zone of theoretical visibility, or ZTV diagram, for the proposed development, with the green areas indicated where only the existing and operational schemes would be visible were Rivox to be approved, the yellow areas indicating where only Rivox would be visible, and the blue areas indicating where all of these schemes would be visible, including Rivox. The outer ring in this diagram indicates a distance of 20 kilometres from the proposed wind turbines at their closest point. The next slide shows a similar visualisation to the previous one, except this relates to the cumulative situation with wind turbines to the south of the proposed development. This diagram has also been lifted from the submitted EIA report, and it appears there as figure 5.16b of chapter 5 of volume 3a. It's showing a ZTV for the proposed development, again with the green areas indicating where only the existing and operational schemes would be visible were Rivox to be approved, the yellow areas indicating where only Rivox would be visible, and the blue areas indicating where all of these schemes would be visible, including Rivox. Again, the outer ring in this diagram is indicating 20 kilometres from the proposed wind turbines at their closest point. Moving to the next slide, the report also considers impacts on the Thornhill Upland Regional Scenic Area and the Moffat Hills Regional Scenic Area, and this map shows the boundaries of the designations in relation to the proposed development, as well as the A74M, Moffat and Beatica settlements just to the east of the proposed development, Herstains Wind Farm shown as the turbines on the southern part of that slide, and the Scoop Hill proposal, which is the amber dots on the right-hand side. Southern Upland Way is also shown in this map as a dotted green line, but it maybe just doesn't stand out too much. So looking at the next slide, turning to the relevant landscape character types set out in the Dumfries and Galloway Landscape Sensitivity Study, which now forms part of the adopted supplementary guidance to LDP2 and therefore part of the development plan and endorsed by the Scottish Government. The host landscape character type is a combination of the Southern Uplands landscape character type, and that's the Lowthers unit, with part of the site to the east comprising part of the foothills with Forest A unit landscape character type, with the foothills and Middle Dale landscape character types further to the east as you get down into the more low-lying parts of Annandale and the valley that's there. The land to the west of the site is within the South Lanarkshire Council area, and they have an opportunity to provide a consultation response to the Scottish Government directly in respect of this proposal. So the next slide is showing the proposed indicative wind turbine specifications. So you've got a mixture of base to tip heights of 200 metres and 230 metres. These have a rotor diameter of 155 metres, hub height up to 152.5. And in terms of power output, it's provided that this would be up to 7.2 megawatts for each turbine, not including the amount factored in for battery energy storage. Now that's set out in the report at paragraph 1.8 on page 184 of your papers. So overall, you're looking at something that is nearly 300 megawatts of generating potential there. The next slide is showing the proposed indicative wind turbine foundation specification. It's fairly standard, if you like, as a kind of type. The next slide is showing the proposed typical crane hard standing area, and that's general arrangement 2. The red cross-hatched area next to the proposed turbine location would be permanent. The cross-hatched yellow area would be temporary during the construction phase, And the green cross-hatched areas you see in front of you here indicate temporary clearance areas during the construction phase, so kept clear of obstruction. Next slide is showing the proposed indicative wind monitoring mast, 155 metres from base to tip within the site. And the next slide is showing the proposed substation and battery storage layout, correctly annotated in relation to north. The next slide is probably more helpful because it shows that in greater detail. This would be enclosed by a 2.5 metre high palisade fence, comprised of 3 key elements. You've got the substation compound on the left-hand side in this diagram, the substation building in the centre at the bottom, and the proposed battery storage units within the remainder of the fence compound. Next slide is showing elevational details of the proposed substation and battery storage area. And looking left to right on the topmost of those cross sections, you can see the substation on the left. You can see the gable end of the proposed building in the middle broadly, and the containerised units on the right-hand side. So they're fairly low-lying, those battery storage units. The next slide is showing the amendments to the existing junction with A701, and the dark grey areas indicate proposed overrun areas. The next slide is showing the proposed development and the application site boundary in red compared with cultural heritage assets. The larger mid-green annotations show known non-designated cultural heritage assets, and the red mark down there, the southern part of the application site, shows the location of the scheduled monument, which is on the eastern boundary pretty much of the site itself, and that's the only one within the site. The next diagram is a ZTV diagram on the slide here. This is visibility to turbine tip heights of 230 metres out to 45 kilometres for the proposal only. The viewpoints, which I will come on to just shortly, are shown superimposed as black dots on this diagram in the centre. The lilac area represents where 25 to 29 of the proposed turbines would theoretically be partly visible, with dark orange representing 19 to 24, light orange 13 to 18, yellow 7 to 12, and light green 1 to 6. In the white areas on this diagram, there would be no theoretical visibility of any of the proposed wind turbines in front of you today. The next ZTV diagram is very similar, but this is for base to tip heights of 200 metres. Again, the annotation is the same. I'm not going to repeat what it means. It's effectively the same colour coding as you've had previously in terms of what's visible. Now moving to the viewpoints, the next slide shows the location of viewpoint 10. That's a black dot surrounded by yellow that you can see on your screen, and this is at Old Carlisle Road in Moffat. This viewpoint's looking west-northwest towards the proposed development on a bearing of 290 degrees, and it's at a distance of 6.9 kilometres to the nearest proposed wind turbine. And the next slide is showing, from viewpoint 10, you've got the baseline photograph at the top, so this is obviously very close to the rugby club, and you've got the corresponding wireline in the bottom half, with the proposed Rivox turbine shown in red, and those at the nearby undetermined DAR proposal in a kind of buff colour. So they're in the wireline diagram in the bottom half there. The next slide is showing the wireline, showing the proposed development only in red as a wireline diagram with the various turbines numbered. And the final visualisation from viewpoint 10 is a photo montage showing the proposed development itself. You may be able to see blade tips glimpsed beyond the trees on the horizon from this viewpoint. The next slide showing viewpoint 5, which is Moffat Golf Course. This viewpoint's looking west-northwest towards the proposed development on a bearing of 290 degrees, and it's at a distance of 5.2 kilometres from the nearest proposed wind turbine. So the next slide showing the baseline photograph in the top half, and it's also showing the corresponding wireline below that with the proposed Rivox turbines in red and those at the nearby undetermined DAR proposal in buff. And the next slide is showing proposed development here as a wireline diagram in red, and the next slide is showing a photo montage of that proposed development as you would see it from this viewpoint location. Next viewpoint location is viewpoint 2, which is, I think the pronunciation is Winter Clwch, but I apologise if I've pronounced that wrongly. This viewpoint is looking southeast towards the proposed development. on a bearing of 130 degrees, and it's at a distance of 4.3 kilometres from the nearest proposed wind turbine. And the next slide is showing baseline photograph top half and corresponding wireline in the bottom half. The proposed Rivox turbines are in red, and those at the nearby undetermined dark proposal appear in a buff colour. Next slide, looking at the dark proposal, the Rivox proposal even, in red here is a wireline diagram, and the next slide showing it as a photo montage from this viewpoint. Next viewpoint is viewpoint 3, Beatic Hillfort, and this looks towards the proposed development northwest. The visualisation is on a bearing of 305 degrees and the distance is 4.4 kilometres to the nearest proposed turbine. So moving to the next slide, again you've got your baseline photograph in the top half and the corresponding wireline at the bottom. Slightly busier wireline diagram, you've got proposed Rivox turbines in red, those at the nearby undetermined dark proposal in buff, and Clyde and Clyde extension you might be able to make out in this appear on the right hand side of the diagram in blue. Moving to the next slide, you've got the proposed development as a wireline diagram, proposed turbines in red, and finally you've got a photo montage from this viewpoint as well. You can see how the proposed wind turbines would appear from that viewpoint in this image. Viewpoint 4 is at Queensbury, shown by the black dot here. It's looking north-northeast towards the proposed development on a bearing of 25 degrees, and it's at a distance of 4.7 kilometres to the nearest proposed wind turbine. The next slide is showing, again, baseline photograph in the top and the corresponding wireline below that. Again, a fairly busy image, the wireline. You've got the proposed Rivox turbines in red, those at the nearby undetermined dark proposal in buff, and the Clyde and Clyde extension both appear in the background here as blue in this wireline diagram, together with other more distant proposals to the north. Next slide is showing the proposed development in red. You can see that here as a wireline diagram, and the next slide is showing the proposed development itself with the Clyde and Clyde extension wind farms in the background here because they've been implemented, so they appear in the baseline photograph. Moving now to the next viewpoint, viewpoint 7, the Annandale Way near Caldholmouth or Caldham, don't know how it's pronounced. This viewpoint is looking northwest towards the proposed development on a bearing of 320 degrees at a distance of 5.5 kilometres to the nearest proposed wind turbine. And moving to the next slide, top half you've got the baseline photograph, the bottom half you have the wireline diagram with proposed Rivox turbines in red and those at the nearby undetermined dark proposal in buff. The operational Hairstains wind farm appears in the photo montage here in front of Queensbury, so you'll see that as blue in the wireline. You might be able to discern that in the top photograph because it is backclothed. Next slide is showing this as a wireline diagram, proposed development in red, the Clyde and Clyde extension operational wind farm shown in blue here on the right hand side, and the next slide is showing this as a photo montage from that viewpoint. The next viewpoint is viewpoint 9, Ballincleuch, and this viewpoint is looking northeast towards the proposed development on a bearing of 80 degrees at a distance of 6.4 kilometres to the nearest proposed wind turbine. So looking at the next slide, again you've got baseline photograph in the top section and the corresponding wireline below. Proposed Rivox turbines appear in red and those at the nearby undetermined dark proposal are in a kind of buff colour. And the next slide is showing the proposed development only as in red as a wireline diagram, and the next one showing the photo montage from this location, should the development be granted permission. The next slide is showing viewpoint 11. So we're now moving to the more recreational side of things with footpaths and so on that are used. So this is the Roman and Reivers Way near New Mills. This viewpoint is looking northwest towards the proposed development on a bearing of 290 degrees at a distance of 7.1 kilometres to the nearest proposed wind turbine. And the next slide shows top half baseline photograph and the corresponding wireline below. Again, proposed Rivox turbines in red and those at the nearby undetermined dark proposal in buff. Next slide you can see the wireline of the proposed development here in red, and the next slide shows the photo montage of the proposed development from that viewpoint. Next viewpoint is viewpoint 8, Annandale Way. Now this is from Annanhead Hill, and this viewpoint is looking south-southwest towards the proposed development on a bearing of 215 degrees at a distance of 5.7 kilometres to the nearest proposed wind turbine. So when you look at this as a baseline photograph on the next slide, you can see there's the wireline diagram below that as well. Proposed Revox turbines in red, DAR proposal, turbines are in buff behind it. The mini gap and Hairstains implemented developments appear in blue, and you can see the Hairstains South proposal behind them in a buff colour on the left-hand side. So moving to the next slide, this is showing the site as a red wireline diagram. Again, Hairstains and mini gap, because they've been implemented, are shown in blue, and you'll notice Queensbury, the hill in the centre of this diagram as well, and it probably shows more clearly on the next slide, which is the photo montage from that viewpoint. So you can see the backclothing of the higher ground from this location. Moving to the penultimate viewpoint is Hart Fell, again quite elevated here. This viewpoint is looking southwest towards the proposed development on a bearing of 235 degrees. It's at a distance of 10.4 kilometres from the nearest proposed wind turbine. Moving to the next slide, you can see the baseline photograph in the top part and the corresponding wireline below that. So you have mini gap and Hairstains appearing in this in blue on the left-hand side. You've got the proposed Revox turbines in red, the nearby undetermined DAR wind turbines that are proposed in buff behind it, and then you've also got the Clyde and Clyde extension wind farms in blue on the right-hand side of this diagram. So there's quite a lot of cumulative impact here. And the next slide is showing the proposed development at a lower level in red, and the next slide is showing the photo montage from this viewpoint. So moving to the final viewpoint in the presentation, Gateshaw or Gateshall Rig, I'm not sure which, showing the baseline photograph and corresponding wireline. That's the next slide. This is showing the viewpoint, apologies, looking west towards the proposed development on a bearing of 275 degrees. You're now 12.4 kilometres from the nearest proposed wind turbine. So moving to the next slide, this is showing the baseline photograph and corresponding wireline. Proposed Revox turbines are in red, and those at the nearby undetermined DAR and Yoken Head proposals are in buff behind it. The mini gap and Hairstains operational developments appear in blue on the left-hand side in the wireline diagram, with Hairstains South behind them in buff, and you've got Clyde and Clyde extension wind farms in blue on the right-hand side, amongst others. The next slide showing the development only in red as a wireline diagram here. Hairstains and mini gap shown in blue on the left-hand side, and you've got Clyde and Clyde extension in blue on the right-hand side. And the final viewpoint photograph is a photo montage showing the proposed development itself from this location. The next slide I have replicates, now this has been produced by the Chartered Landscape Architect that the Council commissioned to provide advice on this proposal. You have it within your papers, it's Appendix 1, and this is Figure 1, and it's on page 331 of your papers. So this is really, excuse me, outlining the key issues from the Council's Landscape Architect's perspective. So in summary, you can see there's been a range of issues that have been considered as part of this report. We've taken external landscape advice. When you look at the conclusion, this is section 4, I've tried to take a balanced approach with this. I've tried to weigh various issues against each other and try to arrive at a conclusion. I think it's clear that the Chartered Landscape Architect that's been commissioned by the Council identifies some discrepancies with the development plan, but when you consider those and balance those against wider considerations as MPF4 advocates, I've arrived at the conclusion, for the reasons set out, that on balance the Council should support this proposal and raise no objection to it, but I'm quite happy to answer further questions on that point, Chair.
Thanks very much, Robert. Thanks for your detailed presentation. Members, questions for our case officer? None. We're in session, members. Councillor Campbell.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, as Robert was saying, there is a balance, and you know whether appropriate design mitigation has been applied, and I think in this case it has been. So I'll just go with a recommendation, Chair.
Thank you very much. Any alternative views? Councillor Andy McFarlane, please.
Not alternative, Chair, just to second Councillor Campbell.
Thank you very much, Councillor McFarlane. Doesn't seem to be any alternative views, so it's a decision of the committee. Tracy, can you confirm that, please?
Thank you, Chair. Members have agreed to raise no objection to the consultation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We go into agenda item number 8, members, which is an appeal decision for information and noting only for the Rex 112 houses at Thornhill, and you will see that the appeal was dismissed. Happy to note. Thank you, members. I have no other business today. Thank you all very much for being present and for your contributions. Meeting's closed. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.